Bonjour tout le monde, ça va? Moi, ça va bien. Today, our objective is to conjugate regular ER verbs in French. Now, this word here, conjugate, might cause you to come a bit unstuck because you may not have seen that word before. You might not know what that means. That's okay. I'm going to explain it to you a little bit later. All right. This word here, verbs, I really hope you do know by now. What is a verb, please? Okay, hopefully in that gap you've remembered that a verb is a doing word. So something like to play, to make, to run, to jump. It can also be an existing word, to be. Okay, so a verb is anything that you can put to in front of to make an action. So today, in our lesson, I'm going to show you how we conjugate, again, we'll come to that in a second, regular ER verbs in French. Okay, so we're going to look at this verb jouer. We've seen this a lot in phrases like j'aime jouer au hockey. I like to play hockey. So this verb jouer means to play. It's called the infinitive. Infinitive means that it's not in a time and it's not in a place. It's just telling us what we like to do. So j'aime jouer au hockey. And we know it's an infinitive because it ends in these two letters E and R. Those are very, very important to us because they tell us that it's an infinitive and we have to do something with them in order to conjugate it. So there's that word conjugate again that we saw in our lesson objective. Conjugate means to join together. It actually comes from the Latin verb conjugare, which means to yoke. And yoking is like you might have seen in pictures where you've got two horses or two oxen or something and they're joined with like a big, like a metal harness. Okay, so that's yoking. So when we conjugate a verb, we yoke, we join an ending onto part of our infinitive, and that puts it into a time. Okay, let's see why conjugation is important by taking a look at these two sentences. This top sentence you've seen before. J'aime, I like, jouer, to play, au rugby, rugby. J'aime jouer au rugby. We know that, we're very familiar with that sentence and sentences like that. Let's then compare that to je, I, joue, play, au rugby, rugby. J'aime jouer au rugby. I like to play rugby. Je joue au rugby. I play rugby. So we have a similarity at the very end of our sentence. Both sentences end in au rugby. We have a slight difference in those underlined words at the beginning. J'aime, I like, versus je, I. Be really careful with that, please. Lots of people get those confused, okay? So j'aime is only I like. The word just for I is je. But it's the word in the boxes, our verb, that I'm interested in, because this is where we have conjugated it. This is where we've gone from to play, jouer, to play, joue. So what I'd like you to do, in a second, pause the video, have a look at the verb in the boxes, jouer and joue, figure out what the difference is, okay? When you have worked that out, unpause the video, and we'll talk about it a little bit more on the next screen. So you can pause the video now. The difference is the ending. It's that ER that I said was really important right back at the beginning of this video. Jouer, to play, has become joue, play. That's the conjugation, changing that ending so that it puts it into a time. In this case, the present time. There's a very specific formula that we follow in order to do this, okay? Different teachers will give you slightly different rules, and if you've studied the conjugation of French present tense before, you might have seen it done slightly differently, but this is the way that I would like you to do it, okay? So we're going to start with our infinitive jouer, and if you look up any verb in the dictionary, it will give you the infinitive. All right, so that's why it's very important to know what the infinitive is. So we're going to start with our infinitive jouer, and we're actually going to cross out completely. We're going to get rid of, we're going to take off the last two letters, the ER. We're going to get rid of them. Okay? That leaves us with jou. J-O-U. Jou. That's our stem. Now you might be thinking, sir, we just saw on I play there's an E on the end. Why do we have to take off the ER? The reason for that is we put different endings on for different people, and not all of them have got an E. Okay, so we're going to learn to take off the ER and attach our ending, even if that ending is an E. And here are our endings. So if I'm talking about myself, I, je, I'm going to put an E on the end. Je joue. If I'm talking about you, singular, one person that I know well or who is younger than me, tu, I'm going to put an ES on the end. Tu joues. And notice how I'm pronouncing that. Tu joues. It's the same as with the E. Okay, so we don't change our pronunciation. It's a bit like my rule that we hardly ever pronounce that last letter in French. So je joue, tu joues. They sound the same, but they are spelt differently, so be careful with that. Okay, I just paused there a second so that I can make my pen a bit thicker so it's easier for you to see. If I'm talking about he or she, il or elle, it's the same as for je. So I just put an E on the end, and that's pronounced joue. So je joue, tu joues with an S, il, elle joue with just an E. Now, so far, for my singular sets of people, I've always had an E. Okay, and so you're probably thinking, yes, sir, but you've told us that we take off the ER. So far, I can just take off the R, that's fine. But if we have a look at our next set of people, nous, we, you can see that we don't have an E at all. So that's why it's important to take off the full ER and not just the R, okay? So we're going to add ONS when we're talking about we. Nous jouons. Jouons. So here the pronunciation is changed. Listen again. Je joue, tu joues, il, elle joue, nous jouons. We don't pronounce that S still, just like in tu, because it's the very last letter, but we do pronounce the O and N. Nous jouons. If we're talking about you plural, more than one person you, or you are showing respect, like in the way that you address me with vous, we're going to add EZ to the end. Vous jouez. Vous jouez. Je joue, tu joues, il, elle joue, nous jouons, vous jouez. And finally, if you are talking about they, il, or elle, if it's a they that is a group of exclusively girls, il if it's a group of just boys or mixed, elle if it's a group of just girls, you add ENT to the end, but we actually pronounce it joue. Okay, so it's just the same as je, tu, il, elle. Okay, so il, elle joue, they play. So again, once more, je joue with just an E for I play. Tu joues with an S for you play. Il, elle joue with just an E for he or she plays. Nous jouons, still on my rubber, I'm sorry. Nous jouons, ONS, for we play. Vous jouez, EZ, for you plural play. And il, elle joue, for they play. Okay, now it's really important that you remember not to pronounce any of those letters for they. I've seen lots of people do it, even all the way through year 11. I've seen people do it, and unfortunately, it will cost you accuracy marks in your GCSE exam. All right, so be really, really careful with this one. Joue. Now, there are lots of verbs that work like jouer, that follow the exact rules that I've just taught you. So some examples are aimer, which you know means to like j'aime. But if you use aimer about a person, it means to love. Je t'aime, I love you. Arriver, to arrive. Chanter, to sing. Chercher, to look for. Commencer, to start, to begin. Danser, to dance, and we're going to be very careful there because notice in French it's spelled with an S and not a C. Demander, to ask for. Dépenser, to spend money, which is different to the verb that we've learned for spending time. And détester, which again you've seen because you've seen je déteste for I hate. So all of these work in exactly the same way, where you take off the ER and you add E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT. E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT. So what I would like you to do is, if you think you've understood the rules for conjugating our verb into the present tense, you can pause the video on this screen. I would like you to choose 2 or 3 of these verbs that you can see. It doesn't matter which ones, any ones that you like. And I would like you to conjugate them for all 6 types of people. So you would do, for example, I like, you like, he, she, it likes, we like, you all like, and they like. Okay, when you've done that, I would like you to take a photograph of the work, please, and send it over to me. If you still don't quite think you get it, if it doesn't quite make sense to you, go back and watch my explanation again. Okay, if after watching it for a second time you still don't quite get it, then drop me a message in our team and I will do a meeting with you so that I can go through it with you. Merci beaucoup.